Hey everyone, let's jump right in. If you're currently stuck at a level 7 or 8 and you're looking for that exact push to get your score to a CLP 9 or higher, you are absolutely in the right place. Welcome to this intensive explainer of our CLEPP Vocabulary Masterclass. Today we are focusing entirely on structured lexical resources. We're talking about the exact terminology and the specific phrasing that native Canadian raters are literally listening and looking for. It's a high-octane, zero-fluff drill, so let's get into it.
Here is our roadmap for today's 60-term lightning drill. First, we'll tackle idiomatic expressions and phrasal verbs. Second, we'll dive into business, trade, and globalization. And finally, we'll cover the Canadian workplace and labor market. For every single term, you'll hear the English pronunciation twice, the exact Chinese meaning, and then exactly how you can deploy it in your exam to secure that top score. Let's get started.
Section 1. Idiomatic expressions and phrasal verbs. Think of this section as your conversational edge. These are the phrases that sound incredibly natural in everyday Canadian English, making them absolutely perfect for securing those high marks in your speaking and listening modules.
All right, first up, boil down to. Boil down to. 归结为, when you're summarizing a complex Canadian issue, like, say, housing, in speaking task 7, you need to synthesize. You can say it all boils down to the fact that supply is low. Next, bear in mind. Bear in mind. 记住. If you're advising readers in a Writing Task 2 survey, remind them to always bear in mind the long-term consequences of local policies. Then we have take a toll on. Take a toll on. 造成负面影响或损失. These local issues often take a heavy toll on our communities. It's a perfect phrase for environmental texts you'll see in Reading Part 4. Moving on, turn a blind eye to. Turn a blind eye to. 视而不见. As active citizens, we can't just turn a blind eye to the issue, especially when you're comparing options in speaking task 5. And rounding this out, rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. 经验法则. As a general rule of thumb, you'll want to listen for this exact idiom in listening part 6 because it helps you easily spot a speaker's core guiding principle.
Notice how these next idioms naturally shape native arguments. First, pros and cons. Pros and cons, yo diens when. When comparing options in speaking task 5, tell the rater you really need to weigh the pros and cons. Next, step up to the plate. Step up to the plate. 听先而去. Raters love this. Show you're ready to step up to the plate and take responsibility in task 7. Then, think outside the box. Think outside the box. 跳出户口有思维. Canadian employers value innovation, right? So in writing task 2, propose solutions that require thinking outside the box. Moving on, get the ball rolling. Get the ball rolling. 开始行动. Use this one to confidently open a personal anecdote in speaking task 2, like to get the ball rolling by, and finally, on the verge of. On the verge of. 濒临于. If you spot a local business that is on the verge of success or collapse in Reading Part 4, well, you've just found the author's main bias. Let's keep this momentum going. First, at the expense of. At the expense of. 为代价. In writing task 2, you might argue that new corporate policies shouldn't come at the expense of public health. Next, keep in check. Keep in check. 控制或抑制. The central bank is constantly trying to keep inflation in check, which is a major theme you'll hear in listening part 5. Then we have pave the way for. Pave the way for. 铺平道路. Economic control can pave the way for future stability, a concept you'll definitely read about in part 3. Moving on, shed light on. Shed light on. 阐明或解释. If a colleague is confused, offer to shed light on the situation. It helps you navigate those awkward task 6 scenarios so smoothly. And finally, nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. 防患于未然. If a community dispute arises, show off that elite lexical depth in task 7 by suggesting we nip the problem in the bud before it escalates.
Finishing up our first block, we have take for granted. Take for granted. 想当然. In a country as rich in nature as Canada, you can argue in writing task 2 that we shouldn't take our resources for granted. Next, come to grips with. Come to grips with. 面对并解决. Sometimes our communities have to come to grips with harsh realities. This is perfect for delivering bad news in task 6. Then, by and large. By and large. 总的来说. By and large, the community agrees. See, that's an elite natural transition for task 7. Moving on, a drop in the ocean. A drop in the ocean. 沧海一粟. In listening part 6, you might hear a speaker argue that a small environmental effort is merely a drop in the ocean. And finally, read between the lines. Read between the lines. 读出言外之意. To secure that 9+, it is absolutely essential to read between the lines to uncover hidden biases in reading Part 4.
Section 2, Business, Trade, and Globalization. Let's pivot and see how we can build your formal edge. This block will dramatically elevate your academic and professional tone. This is absolutely critical for scoring high in the reading and writing modules, so pay close attention.
Kicking off our business section, globalization. Globalization, 全球化. Frame your writing task 2 arguments around our era of rapid globalization. It really sets the stage. Next, international trade. International trade, 国际贸易. Because the Canadian economy relies so heavily on exports, policies to expand international trade are staple topics in reading Part 4. Then we have tariff barriers. Tariff barriers, 关税壁垒. You'll frequently hear debates on whether to lower tariff barriers to stay competitive globally in listening Part 5. Moving on, emerging markets. Emerging markets, 新兴市场. Companies are constantly looking to invest in emerging markets, as you'll see in Part 3 company profiles. And finally, profit margin. Profit margin, 利润率. Ultimately, bring it all back to the bottom line in Task 7 by discussing the clear need to maintain a healthy profit margin.
Here are some heavy hitters for policy. First, stakeholder. Stakeholder, 利益相关者. In any city planning or corporate policy discussion, always suggest that we engage key stakeholders in writing Task 2. Next, joint venture. Joint venture, 合资企业. You might literally hear 2 executives agree to form a joint venture in listening Part 6. Why? Well, that leads to our next term, market saturation. Market saturation, 市场饱和. Usually it's because their industry has reached market saturation, a very common reading Part 4 concept. Next up, outsourcing. Outsourcing, 外包. This naturally leads to highly controversial debates over outsourcing jobs abroad in Speaking Task 7. And wrapping this slide, multinational corporation. Multinational corporation, 跨国公司. Outsourcing is a cost-saving tactic often used by a leading multinational corporation, which you'll often see profiled in reading Part 3.
We are halfway there. Stick with me. First, economic integration. Economic integration, 经济一体化. Watch out for policies designed to foster economic integration in reading Part 4. Next, consumer demand. Consumer demand, 消费者需求. In a Writing Task 2 survey, you can easily justify a business expansion by saying it will meet growing consumer demand. Then, return on investment, or ROI. Return on investment, 投资回报率. Defend financial decisions in Speaking Task 7 by pointing out they offer a high return on investment. Moving on, competitive edge. Competitive edge, 竞争优势. This high ROI helps local businesses gain a competitive edge, which is an absolute game changer for Task 5 comparisons. Finally, capital accumulation. Capital accumulation, 资本积累. Look out for academic texts discussing rapid capital accumulation in your more advanced reading passages.
Closing out the business block now. First, deregulation. Deregulation, 放宽管制. Listen closely for intense debates around financial deregulation in listening Part 6. Next, trade deficit. Trade deficit, 贸易逆差. Politicians in reading Part 4 frequently argue over exactly how to reduce the trade deficit, especially regarding U.S.-Canada relations. Then, business ethics. Business ethics, 商业道德. Whatever the corporate scenario is in writing Task 2, always demand strict business ethics. It's a foolproof argument. Moving on, diversification. Diversification, 多样化. You can easily support a new community policy in Task 7 by highlighting the urgent need for economic diversification. And finally, franchise. Franchise, 特许经营或加盟. In Task 5, you might compare the benefits of supporting local, independent shops versus choosing to open a fast food franchise.
Section 3, the Canadian workplace and labor market. We're calling this your cultural edge. Using these terms proves to the raters that you intimately understand daily Canadian life and workplace norms, which is exactly what pushes your score into that top tier.
Okay, let's dive into workplace culture. First, labor shortage. Labor shortage, 劳动力短缺. Right now, Canada is facing a severe labor shortage. That is a massive real-world topic to reference in writing Task 2. Next, minimum wage. Minimum wage, 最低工资. This shortage often sparks Task 7 debates on whether the government should increase the minimum wage. Then we have Employment Equity Act. Employment Equity Act, 就业平等法. Pay close attention here. Referencing diversity protections under the Employment Equity Act absolutely dazzles raters with your local knowledge in reading Part 4 or writing tasks. Moving on, severance pay. Severance pay. 遣散费,获补偿金. In listening Part 5, you might hear disputes over a company refusing to offer generous severance pay. And finally, union representation. Union representation. 工会代表. This is where workers rely on their right to union representation, which is a very frequent theme in reading Part 3.
Next up, some core HR terms. First, probationary period. Probationary period. 试用期. When giving advice to a newcomer in Task 1, tell them exactly how to pass the probationary period at a new job. Next, career advancement. Career advancement. 职业晋升. Later, argue in Task 2 that employees need better opportunities for career advancement to stay motivated. Then, workplace harassment. Workplace harassment. 职场骚扰. Canadian workplaces are incredibly strict on positive culture, so demand zero tolerance for workplace harassment when navigating Task 6. Moving on, occupational health and safety. Occupational health and safety. 职业健康与安全. You can map strict occupational health and safety standards directly to common workplace dispute texts in reading Part 4. And finally, collective bargaining. Collective bargaining. 集体谈判. If those safety conditions fail, union leaders in listening Part 6 will definitely prepare to engage in collective bargaining.
Finishing strong now with some elite cultural descriptors. First, equal opportunity employer. Equal opportunity employer. 平等机会雇主. You can praise a local company in writing Task 2 for being a proud equal opportunity employer. Next, commuter culture. Commuter culture. 从前文化. If you live in Toronto or Vancouver, you already know the stress of modern commuter culture. It's a fantastic, relatable topic for Task 7. Then, professional accreditation. Professional accreditation. 专业认证. Tell a skilled immigrant in Task 1 exactly how they should obtain their professional accreditation. Moving on, transferable skills. Transferable skills. 可专业技能. In Task 2, explain how Canadian interviewers absolutely love it when you highlight your transferable skills. And finally, job security. Job security. 工作稳定性. Ultimately, you can argue that most workers will prioritize job security when taking benefits surveys in Task 2.
All right, here we are, our final 5 terms. These are absolute gold for a CLB 9. First, workplace diversity. Workplace diversity. 职场多样性. Always advocate for policies that actively promote workplace diversity. Next, brain drain. Brain drain. 人才流失. You'll read viewpoints in Part 4 on how Canadian cities must prevent local brain drain, especially talent leaving for the U.S. Then, performance appraisal. Performance appraisal. 绩效评估. Listen for colleagues stressing over their upcoming annual performance appraisal in Part 5. Moving on, credential recognition. Credential recognition. 资历认可. A massive theme for newcomers is the hurdle of foreign credential recognition, so definitely use this concept in Task 7. And our final term, apprenticeship. Apprenticeship. 学徒制. Learn about alternative, highly paid Canadian career paths like a skilled trades apprenticeship, which often pops up in reading Part 3.
And there you have it. We just powered through 60 incredibly high-value CLEB 9 plus terms. But look, simply knowing them isn't enough, right? You actually have to use them. So here is my direct challenge to you. Which 3 terms from today's masterclass are you going to actively deploy in your very next Speaking Task 7 practice? Don't just passively watch this. Start building these collocations into your daily responses right now and watch your celpip score jump to that CLEB 9 and beyond. Keep practicing, take control of your results, and I will see you in the next explainer.